Welcome students. In today's lecture we are going to begin the second stanza of the poem Ode to the West Wind, written by P.B. Shelley. So in the first stanza of the poem, Shelley calls the west wind wild because the wind is uncontrollable and turbulent. He also describes its effects on the ground and he calls it a destroyer and a preserver. Okay. Now in the second stanza of the poem, he talks about the activities of the west wind in the air. Now let's begin the second stanza of the poem. Thou on whose stream, mid the steep sky's commotion, loose clouds like earth's decaying leaf are shed, shook from the tangled boughs of heaven and ocean. Now here, in these lines, we are supposed to visualize some lifelike images that Shelley has presented before us. Okay, imagine that there is a huge tree whose roots and branches are scattered all over the ocean and the sky as well. Okay, heaven means sky and ocean. And loose clouds are hanging on its branches. They are hanging on the branches of this huge tree, and here these loose clouds are compared with decaying leaves that are falling from this huge tree. Okay, and there is commotion in the high sky. Commotion means disturbance. Okay, and in the commotion west wind is flowing. When the wind is flowing, these loose hanging clouds are they are shedding from the sky, just like the decaying leaves shed from some huge tree. Okay, angels of rain and lightning, there are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge. These hanging clouds are angels. Angels means messengers. Okay, these clouds are messengers of rain and lightning because they are clouds of an approaching storm. Okay, these clouds are spread on west wind's airy surge. Airy surge means you can say sea of air. Okay, हवा का समुद्र, sea of air. There is air everywhere. Okay, because west wind blowing all over the place and it seems like a sea of air everywhere, and on this sea of air these clouds are spread. Okay, like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fairy maned even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith's height, the locks of the approaching storm. Now, in these lines, Shelley compares these scattered clouds in the air with bright hair of Maenad. Maenad. So the Maenad were the female followers of the god Dionysus. In Greek mythology, Dionysus was the god of wine. Okay, and Maenad were his followers, female followers. Okay, so here Shelley compares these clouds with hair of Maenad, and these clouds seems as if bright hair of Maenad are uplifted from her head, and these clouds are scattered evenly from the dim verge. Verge means kinara. Okay, and these clouds are scattered evenly from the dim verge of the horizon. Horizon means you can say where earth and sky appears to meet. Okay, so these clouds are scattered from the verge of horizon to the zenith's height. Zenith is a highest point. Okay, peak you can say. So these clouds are scattered from the verge of horizon to the zenith's height. That means These clouds are scattered all over the sky. Thou, dirge of the dying year. Dirge means funeral song. Okay. Shogit. Thou, dirge of the dying year, to which this closing night will be the dome of a vast spectre, vaulted with all thy congregated might of vapors, from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst, O hear. Now, Shelley is calling the west wind a funeral song. Dirge means a funeral song that is sung over the death of the year. Okay. On whose death? Death of the year. Dying year. Okay. Now, here is one more image that Shelley is presenting before us. West wind is a funeral song of the dying year. A huge tomb will be erected over the dead body of the year, and the dark night, closing night means dark night, will become its dome. Night will become the dome of this tomb of the dead year, and collective strength of the vapor, collective strength, congregated might of vapors. That means congregated means collected, might means strength. So collective strength of the vapors, that means here we are talking about clouds. Okay, so the collective strength of the vapor will serve as the vault of the tomb. So poet presents an image of the tomb. This is the tomb of the dying year, and in this tomb dark night will become its dome. Dome means gumbad. Okay, and the clouds will serve as vault of the tomb. Tomb means makbara. Okay, and from these clouds black rain and fire and hail will burst, and from these clouds black rain and fire and hail means ole, okay, will burst, and from these clouds rain, lightning and hailstorm will fall. Oh, hear. And in the end, the poet again calls the west wind to listen to him. Okay, now here ends the second stanza of the poem. Now let's summarize this stanza. So here poet describes the activities of the west wind in the air. The wind carries the loose clouds that seems to have fallen from the sky, just like the leaves fall from the tree. Okay, clouds are compared with leaves. These stormy clouds are spread all over like bright hair of frenzied Maenad, followers of god of wine. Okay, west wind is described as the dirge of the dying year. Dirge means funeral song. Night will become dome of the tomb. Whose tomb? Tomb of the dead year. Okay, tomb means makbara. And clouds will become vault of the tomb. From these clouds, rain and fire and hail will burst. Okay. So this is the third stanza of the poem. Thou who didst waken from his summer dreams, the blue Mediterranean, where he lay lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams. So in the third stanza, the activity of the west wind on the surface of sea is described. Okay, and he also talks about the effects of the west wind on underwater plants and vegetations as well. Okay, in this stanza, thou who didst waken from his summer dreams, the blue Mediterranean, where he lay lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams. Now in this stanza, Shelley personifies the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, and he says that the blue Mediterranean Sea was sleeping and he was also having a dream. Summer dreams. He was having a dream, but west wind has disturbed him in his sleep. That means till now surface of the sea was calm and it appeared as if the sea was sleeping and dreaming as well. But west wind has disturbed the sea. Okay? Lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams. Lulled means a soothing sound that send you to sleep. Okay? And coil means, here it means turmoil. That means disturbance. Okay? So this Mediterranean Sea was lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams. This Mediterranean Sea was sent to sleep by the turmoil or the sound of his crystalline streams. The sea was sent to sleep by the pleasant sound of the crystalline streams that are falling into its water. The sound of the water falling was so soothing that it made the sea sleep, and now the poet is saying that west wind has disturbed this dreaming sea. Beside a Pumic Isle in Bass Bay, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers quivering within the waves' intenser day. So in these lines, poet is telling the reader where this Mediterranean Sea is situated. Okay, so this sea is beside a Pumic Isle. Pumic Isle means island made of lava. Okay, island made of lava. In Bass Bay, where is Bass Bay? In Italy. Okay, the sea is situated beside an island made of lava in Bass Bay, where he was sleeping and dreaming also. And saw in sleep old palaces and towers quivering within the waves' intenser day. Now Shelley tells us what the Mediterranean Sea was dreaming. So the sea saw in his sleep old palaces and towers that were once situated on its coast. Coast means kinara, okay? But now they are situated at the bottom of the sea. That means now they are situated under the sea, because they are now submerged. Okay. All overgrown with azure moss and flowers, so sweet the sense faints picturing them. Because all these palaces and towers are now submerged, they are all covered with moss. Moss means sky, okay, and flowers. We know that when an object is drawn in sea, vegetation starts to grow in it, and that is the picture Shelley is presenting before us in these lines. He says that the sea is dreaming of the submerged palaces that are overgrown with sea vegetation and flowers, and these palaces seem to shake within the waves of the ocean. Thou for whose path the Atlantic's level powers cleave themselves into chasm, while far below the sea blooms and oozy woods which wear the sapless foliage of the ocean, know thy voice. Now, for thou for whose path the Atlantic's level powers cleave themselves into chasm. Now, next he tells the reader the effect of the west wind on the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, he says that when the west wind blows, the calm water of the Atlantic starts to agitate. Okay, it seems as if it cleave itself. Cleave means to make way. Okay, it cleave itself into chasm. Chasm means sky. Okay, that means Atlantic makes way on its surface for the west wind to pass over it. till now its water was calm, but now it's making way in the form of chasm for the west wind. Okay. The sea blooms and the oozy woods which wear the sapless foliage of the ocean now the voice and suddenly grow grey with fear and tremble and despoil themselves. Oh, here. Next, Shelley describes the effect of west wind on underwater plants. Okay. Sea blooms. He is talking about underwater plants. He says that we know that there are lots of plants at the bottom of the sea, and these plants are moist from outside but they are sapless. That means they are dry inside. And when west wind starts to blow on the surface of the water, these plants begin to tremble with fear and they start to shed their leaves, like the trees on the land start to shed their leaves in the autumn. In the same way, these underwater plants start to shed their leaves on the arrival of the west wind. Okay. Tremble and despoil themselves, oh here. And in the end of the stanza, poet again requests the wind to listen to him. Okay. Here ends the third stanza of the poem. Now let's summarize this stanza. There is a description of the effect of the west wind on the surface of the sea and on underwater vegetation. Shelley says that the wind disturbed the dreaming sea, Mediterranean Sea, and who was dreaming about old palaces that were once situated on its coast. Coast means kinara, and but now these palaces are submerged. And Atlantic Ocean also makes way for the west wind, and when the west wind blows, the plants situated on the surface of the ocean starts to tremble with fear and they shed their leaves. So that is all for today's lecture. We will continue our poem in our next video. Thank you.